So Max, this is where you fit in, okay? So 81, I studied with him, 82, 83, Bunch of Giants comes out, and I'm reading Fuller's predictions because he died in 83. Computers will make it practical. This is a direct quote. To electronify wealth distribution that accomplish the movements of goods and service that is more channeled design structures, not Big Brother though, since no central planning authority. So that's that whole thing. And so when I saw your patent, this is my question, Max. Are you Satoshi?
Oh, man, you got me.
Because you were tuned in, too.
You got me red-handed. Well,
I should have listened to you when I first came across you, but I didn't understand it at the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, he also said things like, he talked about a synchronous database, and synchronizing things around the world. You know, I personally, there's an overlap for me between Buckminster Fuller and this idea of synchronous databases and global money and the work of Carl Jung, you know, who I follow pretty closely as well in terms of his ideas about synchronicity and the collective unconscious. And I think that
Max,
Bitcoin...
Max, you dodged my question. You didn't say yes or no. Satoshi.
All will be revealed. You know, it's all... everything is revealed at the time it should be revealed. You know, you can't let things happen out of the timeline that they should happen, right? Well, I do have a patent on a virtual currency that's from 1996. So the Keiser patent, U.S. patent 5950176. It's a virtual specialist patent, how to trade virtual currencies. So when I heard about Bitcoin in 2011, it was a leap beyond what I was thinking about, because all the virtual currencies and digital currencies up until then were centralized to some degree. All market making, all federal banks, all political considerations regarding money are all centralized. So the thing about Bitcoin that breaks it from everything else is that it's decentralized. And how do you create that decentralized network? And I think it's interesting because, again, getting back to Buckminster Fuller, you know, a lot of his writings, from you look through it through a political lens, you would say this is not capitalism. This is something else. This is maybe the opposite of capitalism. And yet the result is are tools that enable those who could call themselves capitalists to do fantastic work as capitalists. But, you know, there are a lot of elements to this post-internet age. Like we have the free open source software movement. We have Linux, which is free, essentially free software. And during the early part of the internet age, there was this tremendous, and you would appreciate this, and you were there as well. There was a moment in the internet's history before it became completely corporatized, where there was this feeling of freedom of expression that was going to be this huge movement. And it wasn't until Bitcoin came around that we had a new chapter in this idea of distribution and decentralization and individual empowerment and individual journeys, where people have the freedom to delve into their own spiritual journeys because they have unconfiscatable money that's never debasing in value. So they have no worries. In other words, you achieve individual sovereignty. And I think that's where Bitcoin is heading. I think everyone ultimately achieves individual sovereignty. The whole idea of wealth changes dramatically itself. I mean, this would be a Buckminster Fuller idea, that his idea of wealth was very, very radically different than what most people consider to be wealth. So if you take that and if Bitcoin is the coin of his thinking, and then what do you have? If you had everyone thinking like Buckminster Fuller, you know, the world would be in a dramatically and drastically different place. And with Bitcoin, we can get to that place, and we are getting to that place, and it is happening right now.
So Max is saying he was critical path of humanity. And then he came out with Bunch of Giants, which was the Fed. Or beyond the Fed. Grunge was the people that controlled the Fed. And here we are today. He predicted Bitcoin. He predicted YouTube.
Well, he had an amazing confidence in himself as an engineer. And so he had a vision as an engineer, as somebody who felt that they could architect the future and future-proof themselves. You know, then is that a gift? Can you learn that? Where does that come from? I think in Buckminster Fuller's case, he felt it was below the surface, and he needed to reach in to grab that. And the only way he could do it was to make that statement, I'm not going to work for money. Because if you're working for money, it is a very short-circuiting loop of the incentives are terrible, and you end up digging a personal and spiritual hole
Well, that's why he wrote Grunge of Giants, and that's why Bitcoin. That's why he started saying with Bitcoin, because it was decentralized money, DeFi. So he was way ahead of his times right there. Fuller said something because it's about critical path. And in 1981, I'm sitting, there's about 100 people. This is Kirkwood, California, on the shores of Lake Tahoe. And he says the reason he speaks in a goofy language, and he speaks into the future, quote unquote, he says, if people knew what I was saying, they would kill me. So I write into the future and I use language they can't read. But he said to our group, he pointed straight, it was about 100 of us, he says, it's going to be your generation that takes the fight. And so here we are today taking the fight. You know,
I'm saying all along that this is going to end up in a major fight. You know, I've been saying for years now that it doesn't matter how friendly the regulators are. It doesn't matter what corporations buy it or don't buy it. At the end of the day, this is going to end up in a fight. It's going to end up in a serious fight because this is so disruptive to the status quo and the legacy system.
Bitcoin takes apart grunge. That's why when I read, 83, I read that book, I went, oh my God, what is this guy saying? But people couldn't understand him because he was writing about the future. And I have bad news for all of us listening to this program. Critical path is today.
It's a fight from centralized systems to decentralized systems, and they're circling the wagons. You know, they're getting their rhetoric together. They've come up with ESG, the environmental considerations, as the rallying cry for their attack on Bitcoin. Even though there's no basis for that, it makes no sense. But we know from history that propaganda is not based on things that make sense. Propaganda is based on an emotional appeal. If you can emotionally get people to throw away reason and think purely on emotional basis, you can rally them to do things against their own interests. So that's the only way they can attack the Bitcoin folks, to get people to attack them. But here's the great thing, Robert, is that Bitcoin is designed to attract attacks. And that's the game theory built into the protocol. And it's been doing this for 11 years now. And it's worked its way up from just a bunch of coders hating each other to a bunch of influencers hating each other to a bunch of politicians hating each other. Now we've got central banks hating each other and nation states hating each other. So El Salvador was the bravest and first to come out and say, we're going to make it legal tender. It makes perfect sense given their history. Read John Perkins' book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. You know why El Salvador would be one of the first countries to come out with a legal tender for Bitcoin. But the more they attack it, the more hash rate goes up. Therefore, security goes up. Therefore, price goes up. So the more they attack it, the more the price goes up. And at the end of the day, they only have one weapon in their arsenal, and that's money printing. So I say, attack me all day long, because I know the way you attack me is by printing money, and therefore my Bitcoin's only going to go higher. Attack me all day with your money printing. I don't care. Here's my money gun. Where's my money? Where's my money? I got my money guns. They're all empty. Nevertheless, hit me with your best shot.
And are they just so afraid because there's so much power behind Bitcoin and so many people are? Does it have the possibility to wipe out the monetary system or change it? Definitely change it.
Well, it's happening right now because you are replacing, as Buckminster Fuller, the design is disruptive. It's this immutable network that gives private property rights to billions of people potentially, and you can't censor it. I can say we can transact with it at any third-party intermediary. It's unconfiscatable and mathematically certain to go up in purchasing power. I mean, if you look at the three major categories of investment, you've got fiat money, gold, and Bitcoin. Fiat money is not volatile, but you're guaranteed to lose purchasing power. Gold is somewhat volatile over time, not a little bit, and you're guaranteed to maintain purchasing power. Bitcoin is volatile, and you're guaranteed to increase purchasing power. Guaranteed. Now, I started on Wall Street. You very rarely, if ever use the word guaranteed. But I can guarantee you, because I know 2 + 2 = 4. I know mathematics is real. I know E = MC². I know the Bitcoin protocol is mathematically guaranteeing increase in purchasing power in a world of all fiat money. We only have had a world of all fiat money since 1971, when Nixon closed the gold standard. And the only way they can fight is to print more money. Therefore, I can categorically say, emphatically, you have guaranteed purchasing power with Bitcoin, and I'm willing to accept a little volatility for that. Yeah, we're in the fight. We're doing these parties now all over the country.
Coming to
we're taking a victory lap. It's this victory celebration. We won. Essentially, I'm looking into the future right now. I live in the future today. We won because they lost because they put 100% of their vested interest into money printing, crooked accounting, and a very corrupt connection between Wall Street and Washington. I mean, when Washington is starting to tell Facebook that they're going to monitor what's happening on Facebook, that is what we would say, if we were historians, looks and smells an awful lot like the fascism, right? Let's call it what it is. That's where they're going to the old playbooks from the 1930s. That's how antiquated these people are thinking. They haven't had an original thought in 100 years, and they're trying to control Generation Z. They're trying to control the millennials, the biggest generation in history, by saying, well, we picked up this textbook from Mussolini that he wrote about 70, 80 years ago, and it says we should be fascist, so we're going to try that. And the millennials are saying, hey, funga, we got Bitcoin, and I got my money. See, it's all working. Woo-hoo!
Tell us what you really feel, Max. Hey, anyway, exactly as you're saying, it's like when you point to a chapter, one of my favorite chapters in Critical Path is Legally Piggly. It's how corrupt our legal system is today.
Small ebook, big impact, The Wealth Tree. The only 4 ways that will make you financially free forever. Download it here for free.